My name is Patricia Terrell, Patricia, T as in Tom,Yrell. I'd like to just quickly discuss some of the fairly recent water-related incidents that have occurred across the country where fracking is allowed over the past months and years. Many of these have already been mentioned, but perhaps it's important to remind Governor Cuomo and the DEC, because obviously they're making this huge decision. In 2009, 19 cows were killed due to a fracking fluid leak on a farm in Caddo Parish, Louisiana, that was caused through the operations of Chesapeake Energy. Chesapeake was also the company of record when a farmer in Bradford County, Pennsylvania, had lost 9 cows in last spring. Cabot Oil and Gas has poisoned 15 wells by puncturing the aquifer down in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, in the town of Dimmick. The people there have decided to fight the findings of the DEP in a higher Pennsylvania courtroom. Our question is this what the DEC and Governor Cuomo expect the people of New York to do, or have to do, to defend their survival and their water? Encana, with 2 previous incidents on record, did not learn from its own mistakes and recently became the company responsible for a massive methane migration in Pavilion, Wyoming, less than a month ago. As a result, the EPA has shut down some of its operations there. Finally, there is no regulation in the SGEIS document to deal with the open-air flowback fluid pits. These pits contain 3 to 4 million gallons of radioactive flowback fracking fluid, the contents of which are cancer-causing toxins. As you can see, there is a very big list of major accidents, both which I have mentioned here and which have been mentioned previously, and I'm sure will be mentioned again in following speakers, of the wrongdoings of the companies that are responsible for the gas extraction, and the fact that we as New York State residents cannot and will not allow these companies to police themselves. Our residents will not stand for it, and we deserve, and not only deserve, but expect a much better outcome from our DEC and Governor Cuomo. Please get with it, get with the reality, and put an end to this idea of gas extraction in New York State and ban it completely, ban it immediately. Thank you.
No problem.
It's the sneeze that took you out.
Probably. It was a great sneeze, by the way. My name is Jeff Allison, Jeffallison, from Bethel, New York. I'd like to thank the hosting organizations for putting this on so that we could speak. I find a serious lack of scientific inquiry by the SGEIS into the impacts of drilling and its mitigation. The DEC has failed to complete a cumulative impact statement of gas drilling, and such an assessment is absolutely essential to understand what will be the impact on our lives. There is no public health risk assessment in this SGEIS. Also, in the town of Bethel, we elected 5 board members who oppose fracking and want to zone it out. It is important that home rule legislation be strengthened and supported in the permitting rules. I would ask that the DEC put a rule in the SGEIS that says that they will get a certification from local authorities that the permit is within compliance with the local zoning laws. No certification, no permit. The current SGEIS does not pay any attention really to the lessons learned in Pennsylvania. The warnings are clear and strong there, but without a strong analysis of what's happening in Pennsylvania and other states, gas companies will continue to use citizens as guinea pigs. New York must complete a full cost-benefit analysis of the impacts of gas drilling on communities. Gas drilling companies have grossly overstated benefits and understated risks in its lobbying and public relations campaigns. The DEC must begin to rely on the work performed by independent experts rather than those funded by the gas industry for making its assessments and determinations. New regulations must be carefully drafted rather than rely on a mere revision of the out-of-date rules of the 1992 regulations. The SGEIS process is not a substitute for the serious analysis required for the adoption of regulations wherein the state will take a hard look at the potential environmental impacts that may result from the approval of permit applications. And finally, I ask that this SGEIS document have best practices written into it in every aspect where it can. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kenna Levendusky. First name Kenna, last name Levendusky. I have a master's degree in aqueous geochemistry from Penn State University. And my husband worked in the oil and gas industry in Texas, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and elsewhere, and also for the West Virginia DEP. I was a member of an watershed advisory committee for the state of West Virginia, statewide, and I ran a lot of samples. In the West Virginia DEP does a magnificent job, believe it or not, of protecting the citizens of West Virginia from what they've experienced. If fracking gets rolling in New York State, watch out, because we have underneath Marcellus, we have Utica shales, which are oil and gas bearing, and they'll be after those as well. What I saw in the SGEIS when I read it last time, maybe a month ago, was a lack of technical knowledge for the DEC to use in formulating. They had a lot of good maps, a lot of detail, but what struck me particularly was the lack of attention paid to treatment and care of the waste materials, as many of you have talked about already. They're radioactive, and this came out in some meetings that we attended, my husband and I attended in Pittsburgh, PA in April. The researchers at University of Pittsburgh were really concerned about the radioactive nature of the leftovers from the fracking process. And there's just very little attention paid to it in the SGEIS. There's no plan, really. There's no real plan for it. Where are they going to put it? How are they going to contain it? And we've all seen what happened in Lockport, New York, and places like that where the rusted barrels gave away and these things come to the surface. So I think Governor Cuomo really has got to realize that if this goes forward, that he will have to provide another source of drinking water for not only for us, but another source of drinking water for, at a minimum, 15 million people. And at present, we don't have anything like that. So the economies of scale, the economics of the situation alone dictate that he really rethink this whole process, as many of you have already said.
Hi, my name is Hillary Baum, Hilary-Baum. I'm currently a resident of New York City, but I was for many years a resident of Delaware County, specifically Scotch Mountain, Merridale, and East Meredith, and have been very propelled to be a passionate advocate for food and farming ever since I've lived here. I'm here representing my own little not-for-profit, the Baum Forum, which is a New York City-based not-for-profit. We're a producer of programs and conferences on critical food and farming issues. And I'm also representing a new organization that I helped create called Chefs for the Marcellus, a campaign of chefs, restaurateurs, purveyors, producers, and others in food-related businesses who have organized to support our regional food shed and protect it from the threats of fracking. And I just wanted to add something that Jill was talking about before in terms of the articles that have appeared in the last few days. One of them was about our group, and it was called Don't Frack with My Ingredients. So I'm really excited about that. I'm a founding member of Food Systems Network NYC and a contributor to City Council Speaker Christine Quinn's Food Works project. These organizations share the perspective that New York's regional farm and food economy generates urban and rural jobs and contributes significantly to the health and well-being of New York's urban and rural communities. Governor Cuomo, hydraulic fracturing poses an unacceptable threat to a huge portion of New York's agricultural heartland, to our fruit, vegetable, grain, dairy, and livestock farmers, our vintners, our brewers, our artisan food producers, and their families and their communities. Fracking must be banned. Healthy farming needs abundant supplies of clean water, clean air, and clean soil. It needs land that is not fragmented by drilling pads, pipelines, and compressors. It needs a critical mass of acreage in farming nearby and the infrastructure that would accompany it. And it needs to be free of the stigma that may be attributed to food sourced from areas where fracking will take place. I'm speaking out because I believe that fracking is a threat to the gains that have been made over the last 35 years in building rural and urban businesses and cultural relationships around food and farming, relationships that our communities thrive on. And since I have only 1 minute left, I'm going to say that to us there is a glaring omission in the state's SGEIS, and that is that the state has failed to adequately consider the impact of fracking on the food and farming economy of New York State, and by extension, the food supply as well as the water supply to New York City residents. In closing, I will say that we must vow to protect our region's ability to produce healthful, beautiful food as climate catastrophes in farming areas right here in New York and in other parts of the country and the world are shrinking our food supplies. We can't let leasing to the gas and oil companies take the place of good agricultural policy. We can't let leasing to the gas and oil companies take the place of good economic development policy. And we can't let the gas and oil industry to continue to corrupt our government and policymakers, both in New York State and in Washington, D.C. Lastly, let New York be the state where the absence of fracking adds value to living and working here. Fracking must be banned.
Thank you. The next person is Diane. It looks like that Joan. Pagan.
Oh, thanks. Hi, my name is Diane Pagan, and I'm actually I'm from New York City, but I've been living in Delaware County for about a year now, and I'm a caseworker for Delaware County Department of Social Services, which means that I spend most of my days seeing the children who live in Delaware County who are perhaps the most astoundingly low income among us, and I thought that I would get up and just inject some thoughts for them, because it's my opinion, and not just mine, that the people that are going to suffer from fracking the most physically are children, because their immune systems and their endocrine systems are not developed yet, and therefore any terrible affliction, immunity, endocrine disruption, cancer, all of that, any of that that's going to happen to us grown-ups is going to happen much worse to the children, and particularly if they're poor. And why do I say that? Well, I mean, it just kind of makes sense, right? Because if you are poor, just the market is going to dictate that probably the cheapest places to live in Delaware County are going to be the places that are right next to fracking pits and things like that. So common sense dictates that the poorest children are going to be the ones that become the sickest. There is a doctor named Kevin Chatham Stevens. He works at Mount Sinai Hospital, and I attended something last year in which he's a pediatrician, I'm not, but he basically said the same thing that I just said. He just probably said it better. So the other thing that I wanted to point out to Governor Cuomo is that social problems are extremely costly. And I know that, for example, in Delaware County, we've got about 19,000 families who are poor. That's 200% of the poverty line, and about half of those are extremely poor. And we definitely have people who, and children in particular, who require food stamps to meet their nutritional needs, and of course, even the food stamps are not really reasonably enough, but they do help. My question is, when we frack the water and all of the low-income people in Delaware County and the rest of the county have to purchase water, what social service agency or system is going to step in and put in a subsidy to get bottled water to all of the poor people that need it? As it stands now in Delaware County, only 50% of people who are income eligible for food stamps, who are poor enough to deserve them, do not get them. So are you going to then create a bureaucracy to get bottled water to people? And what are you going to do? Are you going to call them water stamps? I mean, I don't know how you're going to work this out, but it's going to be extremely costly. It's going to be devastating to children, and please consider that. I don't think that fracking is the answer to poverty or any other economic problem. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Laura Coberly, Coberly. I grew up in Delaware County and was a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, West Africa from 2008 to 2010. I have also spent a month in Mumbai, India, and have traveled to many other countries. Next week, I'm moving to Syracuse to pursue my master's in environmental policy. I just wanted to point out that we in New York are very lucky to have such clean and abundant sources of water. In Senegal and in India, the water quality is horrendous. I had to boil water. I had to put drops of bleach in the water and tablets of chlorine in water just to make it potable. And even then, I still got very sick from parasites and amoebas. People I know got sick with cholera and from various other reasons associated with impure water. The diseases and sicknesses that could come from fracking are avoidable. We should not take a resource that is so pure and abundant here for granted. We need to protect what we have and avoid becoming just another sad case study.
Joan Tubber, Joan Tubry. I've lived in the town of Meredith, or I live in the town of Meredith. I've been a middle school teacher for the past 16 years. Previously, I was a full-time dairy farmer for 5 years and then farmed part-time. That is, we worked off the farm to support our farming habit for about 15 years. During that time, we raised beef, hay, deer, fingerling potatoes, other market vegetables, and fish. As you can see, survival in farming relies not only on hard work, but also innovation. I clearly understand the financial difficulties of all types of farming, and as clearly understand the attraction of financial enticement offered by the landsman. The signing bonuses would be irresistible to folks who don't even come close to earning a minimum wage. So while there are numerous critical concerns that I have about the SGEIS, I'd like to limit my comments to addressing the most common justification for signing a gas lease: we need the money. Although attractive, even alluring, the money to individuals, municipalities, and the state will play out as an insidious boom and bust cycle, ending in larger numbers on the red side of the ledger and damage to our environment and way of life that can never be reversed. In the SGEIS, the spacing unit density of well pads with a 640-acre spacing unit anticipated with high-volume hydraulic fracturing is touted as creating less of an impact on community character by reducing the total area required by roadways, pipelines, and well pads. One must bear in mind, though, that the 40-acre spacing for vertical wells will remain the same as proposed in the 1992 GEIS, therefore creating the potential for a vast number of wells to fill in the spaces between the large well pads of horizontal drilling. In spite of the projected intensity of drilling in the Marcellus, there are no concrete projections in the SGEIS of what the negative economic impacts will be. Headwaters Economics of Bozeman, Montana published a study, Fossil Fuel Extraction as a County Economic Development Strategy, Are energy-focusing counties benefiting? And a summary of this study, it compares counties in the West that are energy extractive versus ones who are not. Says those that focus on energy extraction have less economic diversity and resilience, lower levels of education in the workforce, a greater gap between high and low income households, a growing wage disparity between energy-related workers and all other workers, and less ability to attract investment and retirement dollars. I'm particularly concerned that dependence on gas drilling in our counties will supersede and squeeze out traditional economic enterprises of agriculture, small-scale industry, tourism, and the boom phase of the development will preclude our return to these industries after the bust. On the negative side, you've heard it all, and I don't have time to illustrate because you've all heard, no need to. You've heard it all on the negative side. Farmers, other landowners, and homeowners have often viewed their real estate as potential investment for future retirement. We know that people cannot get mortgages if they have a lease on their property, and property with an oil and gas lease is not eligible for FHA financing according to the HUD handbook. Signing a gas lease cannot be viewed as an economic salvation in these tough times, nor as the next innovation in agriculture. Yes, we do need the money, but the crudest understanding of economics dictates that we look at money in and money out. Trading our long-term physical, social, and economic health for immediate financial gain is a desperate measure that will bear consequences for our children, grandchildren, and all the generations that follow us. Given what we now know about shale gas drilling, I call for a ban on the practice throughout New York State, as referred to in the alternative action section of the SGEIS. And furthermore, given what we now know about shale gas drilling, I call for criminalization of the practice.
Hi, I'm Alison Levy. Can you not hear me here? No? People say they can't hear. Hello. Is that better? Okay, good. I'm Alison Levy. That's Levy, residing in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a health journalist, reporter, and writing, and I write on the Huffington Post and my own website, healthjournalistblog.com. I've reported on health for over 20 years, and so my comments really go to those concerns, to the lack of a comprehensive public health assessment in the SGEIS. This is a major omission, possibly a criminal omission, and my remarks are really in that context. Currently, the United States has the first highest healthcare expenses internationally, and our expenses are more than twice those of the next leading state. Yet our healthcare outcomes are actually below those of any other developed nation. We are straddled between Puerto Rico and Cuba in terms of our health outcomes. Healthcare costs are approaching 25% of the GDP. So whatever job gains or economic gains are coming to certain narrow sectors due to this process also need to be assessed both for their public health impact and for their public health costs. The lack of this in the SGEIS is a serious omission. The role of toxins in human health is a matter currently under scientific study, but preliminary research in both animal studies and other studies has found that toxins of various kinds are implicated in cancer, spectrum disorders, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular illness, and neurological illnesses. And this is something, every single one of those is something that really needs to be researched through a public health assessment to see what the impacts will be. Another area of science that we know too little about is the area of cumulative impacts. So traditionally, chemicals, radioactivity, heavy metals, and other kinds of substances that are unleashed by the drilling practices are studied one agent at a time. We need to really look into studying them all together. Finally, a new area of science is finding out that as important as what the genes that we're born with is the way our genes respond to their environment. This is called epigenetics. As such, toxic interferences in the environment can actually turn on and off genes and really impact the way health unfolds. This is particularly critical for infants in utero, children, and subsequent generations. Toxic insults are now being found to not only contribute to autism, but also to turn off and on the right and wrong genes in ways that can be inherited. We could thus be reprogramming the human genome through toxic exposures in a highly negative, detrimental way. As such, for public health reasons, I feel that this practice must be banned until the complete science can be done. Thank you.
Jane Higgins.
My name is Jane Higgins, Higgins. I live in Gilbertsville, Otsego County, New York. I want to say how disappointed I am in the DEC that no official public hearing on the SGEIS regulations were slated for this region. Passing over our area for a public hearing has sent this message to our region and to the gas companies that the land, water, air, and population in this region is expendable. This is an impoverished, thinly populated area, vulnerable to exploitation. We need the DEC to demonstrate that they will protect us from environmental harm. We can have the most stringent regulations in the world for the gas industry, but they are meaningless without the necessary staff to provide adequate oversight. At the present time, the DEC lacks the manpower and resources to hold the gas industry accountable for its actions. Why is there such a rush to drill now? The gas has been in the ground for over 300 million years. The DEC needs to take more time and care to provide as much protection as possible. The gas will only become a more valuable commodity in the future. Most of us in the region have nothing to gain but everything to lose through hydrofracking. It makes no sense to risk everything we have for the sake of a finite resource such as natural gas. I urge you to put a stop to your plan to issue permits for horizontal hydrofracking for gas. Thank you.
My name is Eugene Marner, EUGENE-MARNER. The SGEIS is a totally inadequate document and should be withdrawn. I'd like to speak about just two areas, not technical ones. The first is our own property values. It seems trivial in the light of the threats to our health and to our water and to our agriculture, and yet many people here, and most of us, I certainly, have most of what I own is in my house. The value of that house is not going to be anything at all if hydrofracking comes to this area. The second thing I wanted to talk about is health, and others have talked about it more knowledgeably. But the governor has often said he's waiting for the science. Well, we know scientifically, it's already very well known, the diseases that can result from the toxins that are involved in hydrofracking and from the ozone that's created by the diesel traffic that will be generated by that activity. So that means we're sentencing a certain number of people to die of cancer, to suffer birth defects, to suffer impairment of their lives as healthy human beings, healthy adults, because they're affected by asthma as children. In a way, to decide to allow this is a kind of premeditated murder, really. You have to consider that. So I urge you to withdraw the SGEIS and ban hydrofracking in New York State. Thank you.